The Pokemon Day 2026 leaks are insane, as one of the most reputable leaking source has just dropped a massive bombshell this morning. Let's take a look. For those who have been following the leaks and rumor mill for Pokemon for a long time, you probably know the name Riddler-Ku. This is someone who has leaked and riddled tons of information for the last couple of Pokemon launches, and they have taken to Twitter again last night saying they will return soon with pictures of Pokemon Fire Red version and Pokemon Leaf Green version. Now, these are the remakes of the original Kanto games, and they're quite nostalgic for me. I really enjoyed this adventure, and I'm excited to see what's going to happen with this. Is this going to be part of Nintendo Switch Online? Is this going to be a release of a classic version? Are they going to do another Kanto remake at some point? With us heading towards the 30th anniversary of Pokemon, just a few weeks away, it is very likely that there is some massive stuff for the nostalgia play for the first generation of Pokemon. So I pass the question to you. Would you be excited if they released a Fire Red and Leaf Green version as downloadable content for players? It was just a few years ago that they released Red and Blue as downloadable, and I remember people were like shiny hunting for different Pokemon, even though there wasn't shiny, so you could transfer them to Pokemon Bank or Pokemon Home and find out they're shiny later. This could be really cool for us to be able to revisit these older generations, and I would love to see them branch out the full library of the old school Pokemon games, as they're very difficult to get a hold of nowadays. Central Leaks reporting on the fact that Riddler-Ku is teasing Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green will be released soon for Nintendo Switch, and then a different leaker apparently said eShop paid release, not part of Nintendo Switch Online, will have home compatibility. So according to a separate source, this is going to be an eShop paid release. I'm curious where that price point lands. Maybe 20 bucks. They could try to push it a little harder, but that seems like it could be pretty solid there. But I'm very excited for this because, again, lots of nostalgia, lots of fun, and likely a release coming on Pokemon Day itself. So don't be surprised for a shadow drop right then and there. Now, there's a massive rumor for us to dive into here that just showed up on social media as well. So we're going to dive into a rumor for Generation 10 Wind and Wave, as the rumor mill is flying right now. Lots of crazy stuff coming out. The rumor goes on to say we arrived to Danao, the main capital city in the Sarika region. We were invited by a tour company called Toriko that also manages a resort over at Turba Island. Our tour guide is called Professor Arika. His main job is a tour guide, but also likes to document nature as a side job. So indicating that you're gonna basically be part of this tour company, you're gonna show up at this resort, at this island, and you're gonna be at the main capital city, and the region is called the Sarika region. Toriko package gives you a Roto AT and a special backpack. It lets you use any Pokemon throughout the region, similar to the Synchro Machine. The player gets attached to the back, basically following the Pokemon. This ties directly into the Terra leaks that we've seen so far, where there was a thought that you were going to originally be able to ride on each of the Pokemon, but that got changed, and now you're going to be basically on this Rotom scooter that's going to be able to pull you around the region. It's going to be able to have you take control of your Pokemon and traverse different terrains. We read a different rumor that discussed how the various Pokemon that you utilize will have different advantages depending on the terrain. So something like a Rapidash would be very useful on flat ground, but something like a Golem would move a little faster as you're moving up or down a mountainous terrain. So it's going to be very interesting to see how these various Pokemon are classified and if their movement speed or functionality changes based on those classifications. A woman from a village in a nearby island can hear the whispers of a legendary. Her name is Sharon, basically a co-mentor alongside Erica, like Clavel and Jock. So saying that there's, a person that basically hears whispers of a legendary. We know these legendaries are supposed to be based on Wind and Wave, Grandma and Grandpa. So there's going to be some really interesting lore here. It says that the main rival is called Angeli. She lives at Turba Island and knows most of Sarika. So this is someone who's local to the area. She lives on this island, and she's going to be your primary rival as you're going through this adventure. After getting the starters, not spoiling that, LOL, of course, you'll meet a wild and weak Charizard. Basically will be the introduction to the game's main gimmick, which at this point we're expected to be a mechanic called Majin. This mechanic is supposed to be weather-based. It's going to influence the Pokemon and kind of change their form a little bit. It seems as though there's going to be a handful of types that are reflected on this mechanic that maybe get some special treatment, kind of like Gigantamaxing with special treatment. It's possible that we're going to see some developments there, but ultimately it seems like you're going to get a weak Charizard, a wild and weak Charizard, which is interesting because if you're getting a Charizard early in the game, I'm curious how they're going to tie that in. If you're going to fight it, or if I don't think you're going to add it to your team that early in the game. That'd be a little strange. The backpack has a crafting menu, has some fun GBA-like music. That sounds fun. I like the idea of the old school throwback music and a crafting menu. I really enjoyed being able to craft Pokeballs and other things in Legends Arceus. Seamless battling like ZA is in. Unfortunately, it's still turn-based. There's Pokemon that can chase you down, which I thought was cool. So you're going to have aggressive Pokemon that are going to chase after you, apparently. And it's also indicating that the battling is like ZA, but it's turn-based, which I find to be interesting. So I don't really know how the two kind of tie together. Like, you're able to select your move, but you have to let your opponent pick a move, and then you pick a move, but it's a little bit more fluid. It's possible that they're hybridizing these systems together a little bit, and we've seen everything so far has pointed to the fact that this is indeed a turn-based combat system. It's not going to be exactly like ZA, where you're going to be able to fire off moves and they have kind of a cooldown. So I'm really excited to see how that plays out. I'm a fan of both, honestly. Like, I really like ZA's battle system. It was way better than I thought it was going to be. So I'm open to seeing what they end up doing here. I think there's a lot of potential. The head of the resort subsidiary in Toriko is a man in the wind version and a woman in the wave version. Their windows and their husband, wife is implied to have been killed by a Pokemon. Oh, it's widows, not windows. They're the main antagonist. So it's saying that the head of the resort is a man in the wind version and a woman in the wave version. Their widows are the husband and wife, and they were killed by a Pokemon. And that may tie directly to the legendary Pokemon. We talk about wind and wave grandma and grandpa. Very possible that this ties directly into that. And there's some really interesting, haunting Pokemon, some sort of interesting control aspect. I'm really excited to see what that turns into. And I think there's going to be some really interesting lore when we look at the Southeast Asia region in the Pokemon world. They have a son called Ralph, which is one of the rivals. He looks emo. So we got Gladeon 2.0 coming in, it seems. My boy Ralph. My kids have been watching Wreck-It Ralph lately, so Ralph is a name that is very frequent in this household, but looks like we got two rivals, apparently, not surprising there, indicating that Toby Fox will not return for the soundtrack, okay? It says Pikachu looks the same as the redesign from the leaks, albeit smaller eyes, indicating that a handful of these Pokemon are getting redesigns or remodels, which we've seen already through the Terra leak. I find this to be really interesting, and it's going to be one of the biggest challenges I think Pokemon has as they continue to move to this next generation of games, is can they bring life and soul into their creatures in 3D? I think that that's something a lot of players, myself included, have really looked back at the old school games and felt like there was a lot of life and spirit in the Pokemon, and some of that is lost a little bit in 3D. I think it's gotten better, but if you go back to like X and Y, man, it's pretty rough. Some of these Pokemon look pretty rough there. The gimmick basically gives you the ability to use similar moves like the Rogue Megas in ZA, really chaotic when in free roam multiplayer raids trying to dodge them. So saying that the Majin is going to give you like crazy moves like the Rogue Megas. It's chaotic. You're going to be able to do all sorts of crazy stuff. And I'm really interested to see kind of how that all plays out. And then it says voice acting was incomplete, so Angeli had the voice of a Japanese man. That's interesting. If there is indeed voice acting, which it seems like there was some lines in the code that may point to that, that would be pretty crazy if they did indeed drop voice acting in this game. I think that the Pokemon fandom would lose their mind. To me, it's like, as someone who's looking at what they do, I feel like voice acting isn't that crazy of a task for them to do. The biggest challenge for them is that they have to do it in every language. So I'm really curious to see if they're going to solve that problem for people, because I know there's been times. I always think back to what was it, Sword and Shield, the dark type gym with the music, Piers I think his name was, and the music wasn't even doing anything. That was like the worst experience of all time in Pokemon, in my opinion. But either way, a really interesting rumor, seems to be getting a lot of traction. It was posted this morning, so I'm curious to see what you guys think about this one, but a lot of really interesting substance that ties back to a lot of the leaks that we've already seen. I'm not going to write this one off as real or fake. It's probably the most legitimate one we've seen so far in recent past, but it's hard to say until we get more information from Pokemon themselves. Fire Red Leaf Green Port might be coming on Pokemon Day, so stay tuned for that, and we'll keep you guys posted on any of the news, rumors, leaks, and updates right here. Don't you miss out. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment down below if you guys are stoked for Pokemon Day, and I'll see you guys on the next update.